has to read the local. So each customer node has also a local registry node specific resource, and that is called Oracle local registry as well as OLR. OLR is installed configure when the cluster is installed. It's automatically created whenever you install the clusterware on that. One of its function is to facilitate the ASM stores and to identify where it has stored the OCR and the voting disk at the start of the clusterware. If you say command OR check minus local, it will give you the list where the local file is there and what are the files, version, what is the size, where it has stored the OLR file. So this is also very important in case you need the OCR. Now the second thing is very important thing is in the cluster registration, a lot of people, if you remember, whenever you start a system or a period, a lot of changes happen in organization, and there are some changes where either you move the hardware or you move, sometimes the IP addresses are changed, or some way you want to change the interconnect or global. Is there any way once I have installed, can I change my IP address or can I change my Ethernet? Yes, definitely there is option given to you to change that there. But there is a systematic way of changing it and noting down it. So the first command which is very useful is OIF olive configuration command is OIF CFG IF list out all the interface available in the customer -p -n. Okay, if you want to just know what is your public and private interfaces, if you type the command OIF CFG get list, then it will tell you what is your global public and global. Let's execute this command simultaneously on our clusterware. Sorry. Okay. Okay, we need to be in grid. Okay, this is the so if you do OCA, you'll okay. So if you write it, there are the commands which are available for you to use it. Okay, these are all commands. If you put it O star, then you will get all the command which you can use it for the checking the parameters. Okay, so this is what we will do it. Okay. You see OIFCFG config. I'm not able to see that. Command itself not existing. CFG. Okay, 1 minute. Okay, OIFCFG. Is that
Market too much in it.
Okay, sorry. See, in this we are getting default cluster interconnect as global, and default is the global public. So this is the IP when if you remember, when you did the first installation, it asks you for the IPs, it automatically selected and then do it. So we are not changing this environment. If tomorrow if you want to change anything, you will know which are the Ethernet card. Here the Ethernet card is 0 and the third Ethernet card is been used. If anybody wants to go into more detail, if you go through root, sorry, if you go to SU root, okay, and there's a command called knit, which can tell you more details about that. Okay, this is the network adapter command, which you can use it. Okay, see, here it has been given what are the Ethernet card we are currently using, what is their status. If you click on this Ethernet card, you get something like IPs and all that. Please don't change, but in the troubleshooting we are going to use this utility and try to disable this card and see what happens on the background. Okay, I want to close, there are a lot of sessions available. Okay, so that's the command where you can see if you have root access to your machine, you can see all the configuration detail. Okay, if you want to see what are the virtual IPs and Wi-Fi address interface you are going to use, if you type the command svrctl config nodeps -a, this will give you the list of what you're going to have the virtual IPs which are being used. Now in this environment, if you remember, we have all the virtual IPs which we have been using currently is are been assigned by DCP IP, and so all the IPs we are going to get is automatically. So if in some scenarios, in some customers, they give a static IP instead of that IP, and tomorrow you are going to change the series of IPs. Suppose you want to change from 192.0.247 to another series, you can definitely change, but there is a well-defined process to change the VIPs. Okay, so before you want to change the VIPs on that, the first step is very important. You will have to stop all the services which are using VIPs. All the services which are being dependent on this VIP has to be stopped on all the nodes. If you are going to use on a particular host, then you can specify -n option is nothing but the node. So SVR stop service -d database whatever and services which are based on that. Then after that you can use the SVR config option, config VIP -n. This will give you what is the current configuration of the VIPs user doing. And then once you know the why we are trying to find out, in case if you have a problem in changing, at least you can go back to the all configuration. Then we stop all the VIPs which is running on host. When we say NCR stop VIP -n host, verify the VIP is no longer running on any, that if you -a option will give you display that. Okay, if config -a so that you don't have any node running. Once you have done that, make the necessary changes on ETS file. Suppose you are doing any changes, there are couple of directories which you need to update. One is etc host and the second is in your DNS server, because you need to resolve with the new IPs. So if you are going to change the scan IPs, that new scan IPs then need to be updated in DNS server. Once that is done, you can type the command svs modify node app -host hostname -n hostname -a whatever the new IP address which you want to assign, the settings 255 and which Ethernet card you want to use. Once you have typed this command, the IP is being changed, and then you can start the VIPs and then verify the cluster utility on that. The cluster utility component which you are going to verify is cluster verify component node connections, all the node connection on all node purpose, so that it's the new IPs is reflected across the clusterware and it's working change. So you can definitely change, but it requires around 9 steps. The second thing is very important. Do you want to change the global interconnect? Suppose you find that there is a problem with a particular IP or a particular switch which you are using, and there is a different set of IPs which you need to use, then you can even change using global connect. So the command is OIF config set IP is equal to -global. What is the Ethernet card you are going to it? It's in this case it is Ethernet 2. The IP address of that Ethernet card colon cluster interconnect. Once you do that, you have to stop the CRS, restart the CRS. Okay, configure that so using infconfig you are going to change the IP address. Previously it was 020 and then you must change it to 50 and add the new, remove the former adapter specification. You are going to delete the configuration which you have used previously, Ethernet 1, and now start with that. So this is the process in case if you want to change the Ethernet port or that. Okay. If config is the utility used by mostly the network administrator to configure your network adapter and all that. In Windows we don't use it, in Unix we use it, and so okay. Okay, suppose tomorrow we talked about 3 default scan listeners, but if I want to add extra scan listener, you have add, but they need to have multi-domain resolutions. Then in that case you can go up till 14. You can add the scan VIP address, SVR scan, add scan on the cluster what you want to do, add the scan. Okay, to remove the scan from a particular cluster, you can specify the node. Same way you can add and delete the scan listener. If you are not using default port, then you will have to specify also the port number to add the scan listener, the port number where it is going to run. You can remove a scan listener. If you want to remove all the scan listener, you can just say SVI set here, remove scan underscore listener. It will remove for all. And most of the case you will have to use the option -F, nothing but a force absent, because many times the listener is still, or the VIPs are all still on the scan listeners. Okay. There is also option to modify the scan listener name. If you remember, we were having problem while putting the name of the scan listener. By mistake, if you have written wrongly or you want to change the naming convention, you can definitely change. But make sure that the name what you are going to go is going to get resolved within your etc host or DNS server, and going to get the set up the listener where the IPs where the scan listener will be running. Okay, you can modify the scan listener statistic automatically if you want to change it to running. In this case, it will go and scan the running scan IPs, take that information and add to your scan listener. Okay, so these are the things. Okay, the tools that cannot be used to manage clusterware operation or Oracle. Okay.
Oracle University. Yeah.
Tell me.
Cannot be.
Okay. Any guesses?
Oracle Universal Installer.
Yes, guys.
Oracle University. Oracle Universal Installer.
Okay. Okay. Okay, great. So, second one. Yes. What is the answer?
One.
Each cluster node has local registry for node specifying. Yes. Oh. Okay, 1, 3, 4. Well, that is true. Second, it is not manually created. It is automatically created when you do the installation of grid info on each node. Okay. Now let's do the quick lab, and then we have the second chapter, which is very important and interesting for you also, will be adding of a clusterware node. Okay. And then we can start doing lab. Okay. This is addition of the node. There is no deletion of node. Addition of the node. Okay. Do you remember the last entry, which is when added by the installer, which was not present? H1:35 respawn etc init.b init.os run, they have null. So whenever you try to kill this process, automatically it will be respawn. Okay. Now we have done the check CRS, CTL, stat minus T will give you what is the current resource which are open, and or here you will see difference that I have created a database and it is open for using. Okay. Now if you try to fire the command crasctl stop crs, does it works? No. It says insufficient
No
user
privileges.
privilege because you have to have a privilege.
Root.
But if I say crasctl stop cluster, does it allow? No. Again it says me I cannot stop because this has to be fired through root command. Okay. So I'm going back to root. I'm setting the Oracle environment, otherwise every time I have to type the path 1 crasctl top
Type it.
crs.